I remember the day I first laid eyes on Claire. It was at a little coffee shop on the corner of Maple and Fifth, where the air was always fragrant with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and pastries. She was sitting at a corner table, her auburn hair cascading down her shoulders, her blue eyes sparkling with laughter as she spoke with a friend. I was immediately drawn to her, and after some hesitant moments, I finally introduced myself. We quickly fell in love, entwining our lives in a whirlwind romance that seemed to eclipse everything else. A year later, we stood side by side, exchanging vows in front of our closest friends and family. My heart swelled with pride and joy as I realized I would spend the rest of my life with her. We moved into a modest two-bedroom apartment in the heart of the city, filled with laughter, dreams, and the promise of a bright future. Claire was everything I ever wanted: kind, intelligent, and adventurous. She worked as a graphic designer, and her creativity often spilled over into our home life, where she would decorate our apartment with her unique flair. I was a software engineer, buried in code during the day, but I always made time for our weekend adventures and date nights. As time passed, however, I sensed a change. The laughter that once echoed through our apartment became more subdued. Claire often worked late, claiming tight deadlines at the agency. I trusted her. After all, we had built our relationship on honesty and respect. But there was a nagging feeling in the back of my mind that I couldn't shake. It was during one of those late nights while I was home alone that I first saw the signs. Claire had forgotten her phone on the kitchen counter, and as I was about to call her, a notification pinged. It was a message from someone named Derek. Curiosity got the better of me and I opened it. It was a simple, flirty message asking how her day was going. My heart sank. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. It could have been innocent, perhaps he was just a colleague. But as the days turned into weeks, I found myself plagued with doubt and suspicion. I started to pay closer attention to Claire's behavior. The late nights became more frequent, and she was often vague about her plans. When I confronted her about it, she brushed it off with a smile, claiming I was being paranoid. But the seed of doubt had been planted and I couldn't shake it. I began to dig deeper, looking for evidence of what I feared the most. I installed a tracker on Claire's phone, convincing myself it was for her safety. I told myself it was only a precaution. I had to know where she was going and who she was with. Each evening, as I watched the little dot on my phone screen move around the city, something inside me twisted. I followed her to that coffee shop where we first met, and my heart raced with hope. Maybe she was just meeting a friend. But when I noticed her laughing and leaning in close to a man at the table, the world around me collapsed. I felt a surge of anger and betrayal wash over me. The man was Derek, the same name from the messages. My heart raced as I watched them, my fists clenched at my sides. I thought of all the dreams we shared, the love we built. How could she do this to me? The next few days were a blur. I confronted her again, and this time I was armed with information. I showed her the messages I had seen and told her I knew about her meetings with Derek. Her response was a mix of denial and anger. She claimed I was invading her privacy, that I had no right to spy on her. But I knew better. The truth was out, and I felt the betrayal like a knife in my chest. It hurt more than I could express. My world shattered, and the love I had for Claire twisted into something dark and vengeful. I couldn't just let this slide. I had to plan my revenge, to make her feel the pain she had inflicted on me. The thought of it consumed me, fueling my every waking moment. I started to devise a plan that would expose her betrayal and turn the tables on the woman I once loved. Would I go through with it? Would I ruin the life we once dreamed of? The answer was simple: yes. My heart was broken, and I needed to make her pay for what she had done. The day I confronted Claire about her infidelity remains etched in my mind. It was a rainy evening, the kind that usually made me feel cozy and reflective. But that night, the sound of rain pounding against the window felt like a drumbeat of impending doom. The tension was palpable as we sat across from each other at our kitchen table, the air thick with unspoken words. I had waited until she returned home from yet another late night at work. Her cheeks were flushed, and I could smell the faint perfume of another man on her. It made my stomach churn. In that moment, I felt as if I were watching a scene from a movie, surreal and jarring. I steeled myself for the confrontation, knowing that it would change everything. "Claire," I started, trying to keep my voice steady, "we need to talk." She looked up from her plate of cold pasta, her brows knitting together in confusion. "About what?" "I'm really tired and I have so much work to catch up on." "About Derek," I said, my voice firm. "I know about him. I know you've been meeting him." The color drained from her face, and for a moment I thought she might deny it, but instead she simply stared at me, tears brimming in her eyes. "How did you find out? Does it matter?" I shot back, anger bubbling up inside me. "I trusted you, Claire. I thought we had something real, but you've been lying to me." "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said, her voice trembling. "Derek and I just connected. It wasn't planned. You've been so busy with work and I felt lonely." The words fell like heavy stones between us. I wanted to scream, to throw things, to let my pain and rage explode. But instead, I felt a cold calmness wash over me. This wasn't just about her infidelity, it was about my shattered trust, my broken heart. "Were you ever going to tell me?" I asked, my voice quieter now, almost pleading. "I didn't know how," she admitted, her gaze dropping to the table. "I didn't want to hurt you. But you did, Claire. You hurt me more than I thought was possible." The betrayal cut deeper than I expected. I felt my world crumble, the weight of my love for her crashing down into a pit of despair. "What do you want from me? Do you want to keep living this lie?" I don't know," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I still love you, but I'm confused." The word confused stung like an insult. So this was what my love had come to: confusion, lies, and betrayal. I stood up and walked away, my heart heavy in my chest. I needed space, clarity, and a plan. Revenge, I realized, was the only way to regain control. Over the next few days, I became a man possessed. I immersed myself in the details of Claire's life, her routine, and her interactions. I started to document her movements, noting the times she went out, the excuses she made, and the texts she received. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deeply rooted her betrayal was. This wasn't just a fling. It was an emotional affair that had been festering for months. I knew I had to present the evidence to her, and my plan started to take shape. I decided I would confront her once more, but this time it would be on my terms. I would gather everything I had: the messages, the details of her meetings with Derek, and my own observations. I would put her on the spot, and I would expose everything. With each passing day, the anger inside me morphed into a quiet resolve. I began to plot how I would reveal the truth to her, and I came up with a strategy that would ensure she felt the consequences of her actions. I wouldn't just show her what she had done. I would make her understand the depth of the pain she caused me. I started reaching out to her friends, inviting them over for a gathering at our apartment under the guise of celebrating a promotion at work. Claire was excited and began planning everything, blissfully unaware of my ulterior motives. I decided that I would confront her in front of those she cared about. The humiliation would serve as my revenge, and for her to look around and see the disappointed faces of her friends would drive the dagger home. As I prepared for the evening, I could feel a mix of exhilaration and dread. I was about to open Pandora's box, and there was no turning back. I found myself losing sleep over the thought of what was to come. Would Claire understand the gravity of her betrayal? Would she finally see the damage she had done? The night of the gathering arrived, and our apartment was filled with laughter and music. Friends mingled, and for a brief moment, I tried to enjoy the facade of normalcy. But inside, I was a storm of emotions, waiting for the right moment to unleash my plan. Claire was radiant, glowing in a dress that hugged her figure perfectly. Her smile was infectious, but I couldn't let that distract me. When everyone settled down for dinner, I took a deep breath. It was time to let the truth unfold. I stood up, raising my glass to capture everyone's attention. "Thank you all for coming tonight. I have something important to share about Claire." The laughter faded and the room fell silent. I felt the weight of their gazes on me, and I steeled myself for what was to come. As the laughter echoing through our apartment faded, I felt an intoxicating surge of power coursing through me. The time had come to unmask the woman I once loved, and it would be cathartic to watch her face as the truth unfurled. I could see Claire's smile falter as she sensed my serious tone. The room was tense, and the atmosphere shifted from light-hearted to ominous. "First off," I began, my voice steady, "I want to say how much I appreciate all of you being here tonight. Your support means the world to Claire and me." I glanced at her, and she exchanged a nervous look with me, sensing that something was amiss. "But there's something we need to address, something that's been eating away at our relationship, something that involves Claire." Gasps rippled through the group and Claire's eyes widened. She opened her mouth to speak, but I raised my hand, silencing her. This was my moment, and I had planned it meticulously. I could hear my heart pounding in my chest as I pulled out my phone, ready to present my evidence. "Claire has been unfaithful to me," I stated, the words hanging heavily in the air. Shocked murmurs erupted among our friends, and a profound silence fell upon the room. I could feel every pair of eyes locked on us, and my resolve strengthened. This was the reckoning. With a calculated calmness, I displayed the messages on my phone, my heart racing as I read them aloud. "Here's a message from Derek that I found a few weeks ago. I can't wait to see you tonight. You make me feel alive." And another, "Don't worry about him. You deserve to be happy." Each word cut through the air like a knife, and I could see Claire's face turn pale as she heard her own betrayal laid bare. "This isn't just some casual fling," I continued, my voice growing stronger. "You've made the choice to betray me while I trusted you completely. I've followed you, I've seen you, and I have all the evidence I need." The shock and disbelief from our friends were palpable, their expressions shifting from confusion to sympathy for me, mixed with disappointment for Claire. Claire sat frozen, her expression a mix of horror and denial. "Please stop. This isn't what it looks like," she pleaded, tears welling up in her eyes. But I pressed on, determined to make her face the consequences of her choices. "Isn't it, Claire?" I shot back. "You knew exactly what you were doing when you decided to meet him. You could have come to me, and instead, you chose to sneak around behind my back." The room was silent except for the sound of my heartbeat thundering in my ears. Friends exchanged glances, some shaking their heads in disbelief. I had been waiting for this moment, and with every word I felt lighter, as if a weight was being lifted off my shoulders. I continued to speak, laying out the timeline of her betrayal as if presenting a case in court. "You've lied to me day after day, pretending everything was fine while you were out with him." One of our close friends, Sarah, finally spoke up. "Claire, is this true? How could you do this to him?" Her voice was filled with disappointment, and I could see Claire squirm in her seat, the realization of her actions crashing down around her. "I never wanted to hurt him," Claire said, her voice trembling. "I thought I could handle it. It was just a moment of weakness." "A moment of weakness," I echoed incredulously. "This wasn't just a mistake, Claire. You let it escalate and betrayed the trust we built over the years. You shattered everything we had." The guests were shifting uncomfortably, unsure of how to process the shocking revelation. I could feel their empathy for me, and it fueled my determination. I wanted Claire to realize the depth of her betrayal, to understand how deeply she had hurt me. This was not just about exposing her. It was about making her feel the weight of her decisions. As the evening wore on and the tension refused to dissipate, I could see Claire's composure crumbling. The tears streamed down her cheeks as she faced the consequences of her choices. I turned to our friends one last time. "This is my wife, the woman I trusted with my life, and she chose not only to betray that trust but to disregard the love we shared." With that, I stepped back, allowing the weight of my words to settle in the room. I felt a mixture of triumph and sorrow, a bittersweet taste in my mouth. I had achieved what I set out to do, but the fallout was still raw and painful. I watched Claire struggle to gather herself, her breath hitching as she faced the reality of what she had done, not only to me but to herself. But I wasn't finished yet. I had a plan that extended beyond this confrontation. I wanted the world to see who Claire truly was. I would expose her for her infidelity in ways she couldn't even imagine. A plan was forming in my mind, one that would ensure she felt the repercussions of her actions long after this night. As the guests began to murmur among themselves, Claire finally stood up, wiping her tears away in a futile attempt to regain some semblance of dignity. "I can't believe you would do this to me," she said, her voice shaky but filled with anger. "You invaded my privacy. You spied on me. You had no right. I met her gaze unwavering. "I had every right, Claire. You made this a public affair the moment you chose to betray me." The room buzzed with disbelief at her audacity. I felt a surge of satisfaction at the realization that I had control of the narrative now. I had exposed her, and what came next was entirely up to me. The aftermath of that fateful evening left a heavy silence in our apartment. The guests, once buzzing with laughter and camaraderie, had trickled away, leaving behind the palpable tension that hung in the air like a fog. Claire had retreated to our bedroom, her sobs echoing through the walls, but I felt no pity for her. I was done being the one who suffered in silence while she lived in a fantasy. The next day, I woke with a sense of clarity and resolve. My initial anger had transformed into a cold determination. I had exposed Claire in front of our friends, but that was merely the beginning. I wanted her to feel the consequences of her infidelity far beyond that night. I wanted to show her that actions have repercussions, and I was willing to go to great lengths to ensure she understood the depth of her betrayal. I started by gathering evidence. I combed through her phone, her emails, and social media accounts. I had the messages from Derek, screenshots of their conversations, but I needed more. I wanted to create a damning dossier that would lay bare her deceit. Each message I uncovered twisted the knife deeper. She had shared intimate thoughts, plans, and secrets with him that she had never shared with me. The betrayal felt like a living entity, breathing and suffocating me with each revelation. The pivotal moment came when I discovered that Claire and Derek had been planning a weekend getaway together, complete with hotel reservations. That was the final straw. It was time to execute my revenge. I contacted the hotel, posing as Claire, and confirmed their reservation. I had all the details they needed to hold the room. Next, I crafted an anonymous email to Claire's boss at the design agency. I attached a few choice screenshots of her messages with Derek, highlighting the flirty exchanges. I wanted to ensure that not only would Claire feel the sting of betrayal from me, but she would also face professional consequences for her actions. I made sure to keep my tone matter of fact, as if I were merely a whistleblower doing my civic duty. "I thought it was only fair for you to know what one of your employees is up to," I wrote. "This could affect her work performance and company reputation." With the messages sent, I felt a rush of adrenaline. I was taking back control, claiming my power in a situation where I had felt utterly helpless. I envisioned Claire's face when she found out about the email and how she would scramble to defend herself. I couldn't wait to see her response when she learned that her secret was no longer safe, that her professional life was now intertwined with her personal betrayal. The following afternoon, I noticed Claire packing in our living room, her face twisted in worry. She had received a call from her boss, and the tension radiating from her was palpable. I pretended to be oblivious, maintaining a facade of calm while feeling a sense of satisfaction at her unease. "Everything okay?" I asked, feigning concern. Claire shot me an accusing look. "No, it's not. I think someone is trying to sabotage me at work. My boss just called and said there's been a complaint about my professionalism." "Really? That's strange," I replied nonchalantly, suppressing a smirk. "What did they say?" She launched into a panicked explanation, the color draining from her face as she recounted the vague accusations. I listened, my heart racing with excitement as it became clear that my plan was succeeding. I wanted her to feel the weight of her actions, to understand that she could not escape the fallout. The betrayal she had inflicted on me was now echoing back to her. Later that evening, Claire's phone buzzed with a notification that I couldn't ignore. It was a message from Derek, checking in on her. I felt an overwhelming urge to confront her again, to push her further into the corner. I picked up her phone and without hesitation sent a reply pretending to be her. "I can't wait to see you this weekend. I miss you so much." I felt a rush of power as I hit send. As I handed her the phone, Claire's expression shifted from confusion to horror. She read the message, her eyes widening at the realization of what I had done. "What the hell, Alex?" she exclaimed, her voice trembling. "You're being childish. Childish. You think this is childish?" I shot back, barely containing my rage. "You've been lying to me, sneaking around, and now you want to act innocent. This is your reality now, Claire. You brought this on yourself." I could see the panic wash over her as the implications of my actions sank in. She frantically tried to call Derek, but I had already blocked his number. She was trapped in a web of her own making, and I wanted to ensure she felt every bit of it. Over the next few days, I reveled in the chaos I had created. I watched as Claire spiraled, trying to salvage her reputation at work while dealing with the fallout of her personal life. Her friends began to distance themselves, unsure of how to support her after what had happened. It was a slow, painful unraveling, and I felt a grim satisfaction knowing that I was the architect of her downfall. But as I observed her distress, I couldn't help but notice a flicker of sadness within myself. I had wanted revenge, to assert my power, but seeing her suffer brought with it an unexpected weight. I reminded myself that it was her actions that led us here. I needed to stay the course. I had invested so much time into this revenge, and I would not allow pity to sway me. As the weekend approached, the one they had planned together, I knew it was my opportunity to deliver the final blow. I had made arrangements to reveal the truth to Derek as well. I sent him an anonymous message, hinting that Claire had been caught and suggesting he should reconsider his involvement with her. I felt a sense of impending closure as I prepared for what would come next. The pieces were falling into place, and I was ready to watch the final act of my revenge unfold. Claire would not only lose the trust of those around her, but she would also face the consequences of her actions in ways she could never have anticipated. The weekend arrived, and with it, a sense of anticipation hung in the air. I had orchestrated a carefully crafted plan, and as the hours ticked by, I found myself on the precipice of the culmination of my revenge. I watched Claire as she prepared for her weekend getaway with Derek, oblivious to the storm brewing just beneath the surface. She had thrown herself into her appearance, meticulously styling her hair and selecting the perfect outfit, trying to mask the stress that had become part of her routine. I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction watching her, knowing that every effort she made was ultimately in vain. This time, she would not be escaping the consequences of her actions. As Claire left the apartment, her bags packed and her mind consumed with thoughts of the weekend ahead, I felt a mix of excitement and melancholy. This was it, her chance to indulge in her infidelity, and I was determined to ensure it would turn into a nightmare. I had one final move to make, and it was time to set it in motion. I arrived at the hotel a few hours after Claire had checked in, my heart racing with adrenaline. I had managed to secure a room nearby under a different name, and as I made my way through the hallway, I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me. This was the climax of my revenge, the moment where Claire would be confronted with the reality of her choices. I waited patiently, listening intently for the sound of familiar laughter outside my door. And then there it was, the unmistakable sound of her voice, mingled with Derek's deep chuckle. My heart pounded as I prepared myself for the confrontation that was about to unfold. I had decided to capture the moment to document her betrayal one last time. I pulled out my phone, ready to record, and positioned myself just outside their door. I could hear the muffled sounds of their conversation, the flirtatious banter laced with an air of intimacy. It made my blood boil, but I remained focused on my goal. Minutes later, I heard the door click open, and my heart raced as the moment of truth approached. With a deep breath, I stepped into the open doorway, my phone raised and recording. "Surprise!" I exclaimed, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Claire's eyes widened, shock etched across her face as she froze in place, her mouth agape. Derek turned to look at me, confusion quickly shifting to realization. "What the hell, Alex?" he demanded, stepping protectively in front of Claire. I ignored him, my gaze locked on Claire. "You thought you could sneak away with him and leave me in the dark? Did you really think it would be that easy?" I gestured with my phone, capturing the scene, the betrayal laid bare before me. "Please, Alex, this isn't what it looks like." Claire stammered, panic evident in her voice, but I could see the truth in her eyes. Deep down, she knew that this was the reckoning she had brought upon herself. "It looks like exactly what it is, Claire. Engaging in a weekend getaway with the man you've been cheating with while you've been lying to me." I shot back, my voice steady. "It's time to face the reality of your choices." Derek stepped forward again, trying to assert himself. You need to leave, man. This is between the two of us. I scoffed at his arrogance. You think this is just between you two? You're wrong. You're nothing but a pawn in this game, and it's time for you to see the bigger picture. I shifted my focus back to Claire. You need to understand that your actions have consequences, not just for you but for everyone involved. I played the recording back, relishing the turmoil in her expression as her betrayal echoed through the hall. The truth was laid bare, and I could see the realization wash over her. This was the end of her facade. Her world was spiraling, and I felt a grim satisfaction in witnessing it. I can't believe you would do this to me, she screamed, her voice rising in anger and desperation. The facade of confidence had shattered, and all that remained was the raw vulnerability of a woman caught in her own web of lies. I didn't do this to you, Claire, I said, my voice calm in contrast to her chaotic emotions. You did this to yourself. You made the choices that led you here, and now you must face them. As she stood there, tears streaming down her face, I felt a pang of something I couldn't quite identify. Was it empathy? Regret? I quickly pushed those feelings aside, reminding myself of the betrayal I had endured. I had fought for my dignity, and watching her squirm felt justified, even if it came with an unexpected heaviness in my heart. In that moment, I realized that revenge had not brought me the satisfaction I had anticipated. It felt hollow, even as I watched Claire's world crumble before my eyes. Perhaps this was not the closure I had hoped for. I had set out to hurt her, to make her pay for the pain she inflicted on me, but I had also sacrificed my own peace in the process. Let's go, Claire, I commanded, turning my back on Derek, who stood there bewildered. We're leaving, this ends now. Alex, please, I can explain, Claire cried out, rushing after me as I stepped into the hallway. No, I said, holding my hand up to stop her. There's nothing to explain. You've made your choices, and now you have to live with the consequences. You're done lying to me, to yourself, and to everyone else. We walked back to our apartment in silence, the weight of what had just transpired heavy between us. I could feel Claire's eyes on me, filled with regret and confusion, but I remained resolute. I had taken control of my narrative, but the realization that I might still love her flickered in the back of my mind, threatening to complicate everything I had done. As we entered our apartment, Claire collapsed onto the couch, her body shaking with sobs. I felt a swell of emotions I had worked hard to suppress, but I couldn't allow myself to cave. I had fought too hard to reclaim my power. Where do we go from here? She finally whispered, her voice breaking. I looked at her, struggling to find the right words. You need to figure that out, Claire. You need to understand what you want, not just from me, but from yourself. This path you chose has led you here, and it's going to take time to rebuild. I need space to think about what I want too. I turned away, feeling the weight of the moment bearing down on my shoulders. I wanted to find closure, but I also wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could find a way through this mess. It would take time, trust, and a willingness to confront the truth we had both tried to avoid. That night, as I lay in bed, I reflected on everything that had transpired. The anger that had fueled my revenge began to fade, replaced by a sense of uncertainty. I needed to decide what I truly wanted for my future, and whether it included Claire. The road ahead was murky, but one thing was certain. I had taken back my power, and I was no longer willing to be a victim of betrayal. The days following the confrontation were a blur. I found myself grappling with a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, confusion, and even a whisper of hope. Claire and I had established an uneasy truce in the days that followed that pivotal weekend. We both needed to process what had happened, and I knew that any decisions made in the heat of the moment would only complicate our already fractured relationship. Claire spent much of her time in our apartment, alternating between tears and introspection. She had lost not only my trust but her friends' support as well. The silence that filled our home was deafening. It was a stark contrast to the laughter and warmth that once defined our life together. I often found myself staring out the window, wondering how we had arrived at this point. One evening, after a long day at work, I returned home to find Claire sitting at the kitchen table, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. She looked up as I walked in, her eyes red and puffy from crying. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. I nodded, bracing myself for another difficult conversation. The weight of the past hung heavily between us, but I also sensed a glimmer of sincerity in her voice. As I took a seat across from her, I couldn't help but feel a mix of apprehension and curiosity. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she began, her voice quivering, "about everything about us. I know I messed up and I can't even begin to express how sorry I am. I thought I could have both worlds, you and Derek. But I realize now that I was living a lie and I didn't value what we had until it was almost too late." I listened, feeling my heart ache for the woman I had loved so deeply. "Claire," I said slowly, "you have to understand that trust is built on honesty. You broke that trust in ways I never thought possible. It's not just about apologizing, it's about taking accountability and showing that you can change." "I know," she replied, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I've hurt you more than I can express, and I don't expect you to forgive me immediately. But I want to work on myself, to understand why I did what I did. I want to be better for myself and for you." Her declaration hit me hard. I saw the sincerity in her eyes, and despite everything, a part of me wanted to believe that she could change. I had spent so long plotting my revenge, but now I found myself grappling with the desire for healing. "I need time, Claire," I said carefully. "Rebuilding trust takes time. I can't just forget what happened, and I don't think we can go back to how things were. But if you're serious about making changes, then I'm willing to listen." She nodded, her gaze unwavering. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I'll go to therapy, I'll talk to you about my feelings. I want to understand what led me to hurt you. I don't want to lose you." Her words struck a chord within me. I realized that beneath the betrayal, there was still a flicker of the love we once shared, a love worth salvaging if we both committed to the work ahead. Over the next few weeks, we started to rebuild our relationship, brick by brick. Claire began attending therapy, where she explored her insecurities and the reasons behind her choices. We had open conversations about our feelings, our fears, and the future. It wasn't easy. There were many moments of discomfort and raw vulnerability. But slowly, I began to see changes in her, small but significant steps towards self-awareness. We also began to set new boundaries. Claire would often check in with me about her feelings, and I would do the same. We established a communication routine, ensuring that we were both heard and respected. It felt like we were learning to navigate a new kind of intimacy, one built on honesty rather than deception. I found solace in the little things. We started cooking together again, trying new recipes and laughing over our culinary disasters. We went for long walks, discussing our dreams and aspirations, conversations that had once felt lost. It was refreshing, but there was still a lingering edge of caution. One evening, as we sat on our balcony watching the sunset, Claire turned to me, her expression earnest. "I know I've hurt you deeply, and I don't ever want to take your love for granted again. I want to build something new with you, something stronger." I could feel the sincerity radiating from her, and for the first time since the betrayal, I felt a glimmer of hope. "I want that too, Claire, but we have to be patient with each other." "I know," she said, her hand finding mine. "I'll do whatever it takes to prove to you that I'm committed to making this work." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of pink and orange, I knew that we were embarking on a long journey of healing. It wouldn't be quick or easy, but it felt promising. I was learning to let go of the anger that had consumed me for so long. What I had initially sought as revenge had transformed into a path for growth, both for Claire and for myself. I realized then that true healing comes not from hurting others, but from understanding ourselves and the choices that brought us to this point. We were imperfect people navigating an imperfect situation, but I felt a renewed sense of connection. Though the road ahead would undoubtedly be challenging, I was willing to walk it together, step by step. The scars of betrayal would remain, but so would the potential for something beautiful, a new beginning forged from the ashes of our past. As I held Claire's hand tightly, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. We had a long way to go, but together we could face whatever came next. And perhaps, just perhaps, we could find our way back to each other after all.